Vice Chancellor of Nirma University, Dr. Singh, Professor Dave, all the teachers present here today, and my dear students. I am really very thankful to the Nirma University for giving me this opportunity to be amongst you today. And as I have been introduced to all of you, I am not a stranger to state of Gujarat. I happen to be the Chief Justice of Gujarat, and as I told Suresh Shelat, who is with me today in the program, my period was a period of calamities. Heavy rains, then earthquake, and the worst was riot. So many challenges during that period, and we were trying to do utmost from the judicial side to give relief to the people. But I enjoyed the work, and I have developed very intimate relationship with many families here in the judicial side, non-judicial side, and other side. And I had opportunity also earlier once to visit this university. At that time, of course, law faculty was not there. But I immediately when the invitation came, last time I somehow missed my flight, I could not reach. This time I prayed God that that could not happen, and luckily the airlines people gave me escort and a red carpet welcome this time. So I am here with you and I am extremely happy. My wife is also with me today in this function. Friends, we are speaking on three subjects today: rule of law, human rights, and good governance. It is a paradox that in a country where there are a host of laws and very little implementation, laws are avoided, evaded, broken, in that country we are speaking of rule of law. So many laws. As a matter of fact, Professor Dave, when judges were ignorant that on their particular subject there is any law. When lawyers make a search in the internet and say, this is all covered. So this concept of rule of law, I think it arose from philosopher Aristotle, who said that it is better that people are governed by law rather than men. And then Professor Dicey, thereafter, he took it up, he coined this word rule of law. What does it mean? It means nothing but that instead of people or a ruler ruling, law should rule. But if a ruler makes a law and he himself a despotic, a tyrant, what is the meaning of that rule of law? Rule of law means, in any case, in effect, it should mean rule of fair play, rule of justice. And unless the law is fair and reasonable, it is not law at all. So it comes to this, that rule of law means a fair and just and a reasonable law which upholds equality. Then you can say that we are ruled by law and not by men. Take for example constitutional law. In a country where there is a constitution, constitutional law is taken to be the supreme law. Why it is taken to be the supreme law? Because we have recognized some certain fundamental human freedoms as our fundamental rights. And these basic rights cannot be curtailed or cannot be ignored in making subordinate law. So therefore we test every law on the anvil of constitution. So in a country which is governed by constitution, rule of law means rule, that is, all laws should conform to the constitution and should not violate the basic structure of the constitution. This theory was also developed in India. What is the basic structure? So ultimately, friends, the rule of law means not only written law, but not only even constitutional law, but certain fundamentals of law, in the sense natural law. Take for example, when there was no law, neither a constitution nor any statute law, Was there any law in that? There was definitely a law which says that natural law, which is, we have just given recognition to different human freedoms by putting them in the constitution or in the statute. So law, the concept of law is higher than the man-made laws, either the constitutional law or the statute law. It is certain fundamentals of human freedom which we want to protect and guide. These fundamental or basic principles is in fact law. What are these basic principles? Basic principles of any form of government is that individual freedom should be curtailed at the minimum level. Individual freedom should not be curtailed to the extent that you take away the liberty of a person or a life of a person. These are the fundamentals. A human being should be allowed to grow and lead a way of life to his liking. And you are allowed to curtail by law only certain freedoms which are going to affect the public interest. That means you have to make a balance, individual freedom and general public interest. Only in the general public interest you can curtail individual freedoms, and that to a limited extent and to the extent in which the court finds it reasonable and fair. So therefore these fundamental human freedoms, you can say, are the elements of law. I will say that rule of law means a country or a people governed by certain principles. For example, in India, there are so many religions, people of different religious faith. They follow different rituals, they follow different festivals. And if a law is made, you will not do this, you will not do that, you will not, then that is, you are stunting the spiritual growth of the people through religion. That would be against the spirit of the constitution, that would be against the rule of law. Rule of law does not require constitution, but where constitution is there, we have taken it that this is the supermost, supreme law, and all laws made by legislature should conform to the constitutional law, and particularly the fundamental rights provided therein. But rule of law can get perverted. Now in India we have witnessed the period of emergency, when even constitution was utilized to subjugate, to suppress the people. That was the black period. Even in the 50th year of Supreme Court, everybody unanimously said that that was the black period of the constitutional history of India, the judicial history of India. By imposing emergency, you have taken away all the rights, life and liberty and everything. And Attorney General of India argues in the Supreme Court that even somebody kills me, you cannot make a complaint. Minority view was, you cannot take away, this is fundamental. This right to life is not created by constitution, it is a right which is given to us as a human being. Therein comes the concept of human rights. Human rights do not require any law. Even Universal Declaration of Human Rights only recognizes the human rights. But the source of human rights is in the human beings, their existence, their way of living itself. So that was the period when you found that so many rights were suspended. And constitution was amended to suit a particular person, that his election will not be questioned. In General Representative People's Act, there will be separate forum. So whereas there is an inequality introduced, and even constitution is amended for the purpose to suit certain situations, then rule of law is eroded. And we have witnessed many things. Second thing is, rule of law gets perverted where law is utilized for the purpose of just winning elections or allure voters, or to appease a particular section of the society or to oppose a particular section of the society. And that experiment has been going on. We are witnessing every day. Sometimes you make laws so overloaded in favor of a particular minority, so much against the majority, only against females, not in favor of males, no balancing. This has been doing. Wherever there is inequality created by law, rule of law is subverted. Rule of law is not there. Therefore, our legal fraternity and judicial fraternity has to be already on the constant vigil to find out whether fundamentals of law are being upheld or not, even by constitutional amendment. Because Supreme Court therefore has to go, and this emergency period was a lesson that even constitutional amendment is within the judicial review to find out whether the basic structure of the constitution has been in any manner affected. To that extent they have to go, and they have to therefore delineate, and they have to find out, identify which are those basic structures of the constitution. In the constitution we have tried to maintain the rule of law by adopting separation of powers. Lawmaking to one body, execution to another body, and a vigilant judiciary to oversee whether the constitution is being maintained or not. By separation of powers we have done it, and elected legislature, appointed executive to be controlled by non-elected judiciary, because they are answerable only to the constitution and the people. They are not answerable to the legislature or to the executive. So this kind of independence we have developed only to affirm and to maintain the rule of law, because situations are likely to come in future where again this experiment will take place. And rule of law, how can it be maintained when laws are not properly made after proper consultation with the persons who are likely to be affected? Professor Dave, you are aware, laws in favor of women, laws in favor of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, laws in favor of villages. Village people are not at all consulted, not at all taught. No seminars took place. Law-making process does not merely involve involvement of legal representatives elected in the parliament. Law process should involve people who are likely to be affected by that particular law. And that exercise is not undertaken at all. I happen to be Human Rights Commission chairperson in Madhya Pradesh, and I found that laws made for women are not known to women. Laws made for elder citizens not known to them. Laws made for SC/ST not known to them. Legal awareness programs do not reach them. And legal awareness programs, Professor Dave, start after the law is made. There should be a beforehand, before making a law, there should be a proper consultation, not only at Delhi but at the root level, grassroots level. And then you have to have exchange of views with the people who are ultimately likely to be governed by that particular law. Suppose you make a law and people don't accept it. They have no regard and respect for that particular law. How are you going to instill obedience? How many people, even students, know that Hindu Succession Act has been drastically amended? Drastically amended, so much so that a Hindu society is likely to be affected so seriously, a very big dent to the Hindu society. If in a residential house owned by a joint family, married girl is given a share, how can joint family survive? It is impossible to maintain a joint family. When married women have been, and this is in the name of empowerment of women. Through the empowerment of women, are you going to change the fabric of Indian society? Even our Indian women are not accepting very easily, excepting a few very educated class who had been authors of this particular law. Our earlier unamended provision was that in a joint family house, unless the male members agree, there would be no partition of the joint family house, because it is a joint family house for everybody. Even married girl can come to her Maika. Now, if you give equal rights to women in the joint family house also, which was domestic house. Sons-in-laws and brothers-in-laws, they will have share, because ultimately married women will be guided by their husbands. And everywhere there would be suits for partition. It is only thanks to our married women and our married sisters that they are not claiming partition everywhere. Otherwise, I think no joint family house would remain in India. So it is our sanskars. This country is not living by law. My friends, let me tell that, and my wife is sitting here, she always restrains me, says that after you are retired, you are speaking so freely. But what can I do if at this stage when I have no stakes, I don't speak freely? Who else will speak? Fundamental right of freedom, my rights have been restored after I retired. Suresh Bhai knows this better. A sitting judge can deliver justice, can never get it. We can dispense justice, and our judges are very much worried. Many times they suffer injustice, suffer for their whole judicial career, but they don't murmur, they don't speak, they don't come to the media. They do not even complain and say that this is our fate. So coming to the subject, my young friends, please forget that this country is living by law. This country is living by religion. This country is living by their sanskaras. Luckily, Professor Singh happen to be the honorary chairperson of this Vivekanand Sarth Samiti. And I think that was a God-sent opportunity to me that I again read, because in young age I had read Vivekanand, but now with this matured age I have read it again, and I find what a foresight that gentleman had at the age of 34, 35. And he said that nurture religion and spirituality in this country, then you will survive, you will lead the whole world. He never talked on any subject of law. And he spoke so boldly even outside in India at a time when we were being ruled by Britishers. And he said that you cannot take away our religion, you cannot take away our sanskar, you cannot kill us, you cannot kill India merely by making us slaves. Because the religion is in our bones and veins and in our blood. So this country, even today, with so much of mismanagement everywhere, so much of erosion of rule of law, so much of fundamental rights being eroded, so much of crimes taking place, yet majority of people are faithful and believers in some fundamentals of human life. Either they are Jainis, or they are Hindus, or they are Mohammedans, or they are Christians. First they are they, and then they say that we are under a constitution. Constitution for them. I just with my wife, just out of curiosity, not for a dip in Kumbh, just for curiosity's sake, went there to find how these people are there. Why so many people go there, and I mean even accidents take place, they die, but what for they congregate? And just you talk anybody on the river side, कैसा लग रहा है आपको? आपको तो ठहरने को भी जगह नहीं, आप तो बैठे हैं. अरे साहब गंगा मैया के गोद में बैठे, बहुत आनंद आ रहा है. This kind of people we have, who have more faith. They are, I mean, that is a bad point also in the sense that they suffer all kinds of injustices and mismanagement in the society, and yet they are pulling on because of strong faith. So if rule of law in this country has to be maintained, it should be in conformity with the faith and belief of this multi-religious society. That is what I call secular culture of this country. Everybody is free to follow his own faith. Everybody is free to follow his belief. And ultimately all the religions lose significance when you are making a spiritual growth of the country. Once you go to the level of spirituality, religions become subordinate. There are only certain traditions, customs and ceremonials. Main thing is spirituality. What is your goal in life? What for you are born? Why should you behave properly with your family friends? Why should you enlarge your love in the society? Why should you think of the nation and why should you think of the international peace? This has all come to India through religion and thanks to our Vedic seers and sages that has given us this sanskar. And luckily in Gujarat, so much of work is being done by these saints. Although media people are after them, but ultimately they are doing some good work in every field of life. So friends, according to me, I do not know whether your legal experts agree or not. Rule of law in the larger sense, holistic sense, means law which is very reasonable, very fair, acceptable to the people in accordance with their customs and notions and do not at all infringe with their faiths and beliefs. If this kind of a law is there, because this is ultimately man-made law, and if law is man-made, the man can be a despot, a tyrant, and illegal laws can also be made. Certain experiments. Now you witness in the parliament law making processes in country. Very little discussion takes place. Some event, some issue, which they think that are likely to invite the attention of the general public, that will be given a priority rather than some important bills. Very little discussion. And at the time of making law, as I told you, there are many things are required. First, proper discussion with the section with who are going to be affected by law. Second, recommendations on opinions of the law commission. Then third, proper debate with the legal experts, with the people who are working on the human rights side, with the people, NGOs. This process should begin right from the beginning, not at the implementation stage. Before making the law, all these things should take place. And then after making the law, because the implementation is left to the executive, that is the public servants. The public servants should be allowed participation in the making of law. For example, now this hurriedly 1 month bill is cleared and it is passed also because elections are in the offing. Now, have you talked to the police? Have you talked to the executives? Whether on ground level what is going to happen? Now, Professor Dave, we have seen things up in the courts also. So many false cases, number of cases, SC/ST atrocities, all false. Because some nexus has been developed with people to rope in people to get them arrested so that they don't get bail. And our magistrates are flooded with such cases and most of the time they are acquitted. You make a law to protect people and that law is being misutilized for the purpose of harassing people. All of our, as a matter of fact, law is now intruding in private life, domestic violence, this and that. When I was in human rights, women used to come complaining domestic violence. We said that we will report to the police and get arrested. Sir, ऐसा मत कुछ कीजिए, अच्छी तरह समझा दीजिए, हमारी जिंदगी चलनी चाहिए. And NGOs came and said, this woman has been in the suffering domestic violence, please give her relief. All right, you keep her for some time, we will ask her to go to the women's home. Sent to women's home, the lady comes, sir, the women's home is not worth living. How can I live there along with all criminal and people dealing in narcotic trades? Then the NGO comes and tells me, sir, कितने दिन हम इस महिला को रखें? हमारे पास कोई जगह नहीं, हमारे पास कोई पैसा नहीं. फिर उसका हस्बैंड को बुला के अल्टीमेटली यू हैव टू गिव हिम अ थ्रेट दैट इफ यू रिपीट दिस यू विल बी टेकन टू टास्क एंड द थिंग्स आर सॉल्व्ड. A neighbor is given a power to complain in the private life. I do not want to say that women are not required to be protected from domestic violence. I do not want to say that. But I want to say to what length a law can intrude in the private life of a person. and whether it is ultimately going to give some results. Because if it results only in breaking the marriages without making another marriage, because our society is unluckily for we don't have that American style that you go on changing husbands and changing wives. We once tie a knot, we have to suffer or enjoy. Please don't misunderstand my lady friends here. But that is how people, Indian people live, and people marvel at. As a matter of fact, Professor Singh, in America, they are just surprised how so many relations, ये मामेरा भाई है, ककेरा भाई है, फला है, वहाँ है, और Gujarati families even in America live like Gujaratis in Ahmedabad. So many people living together in one house and they don't worry. 2 कमरे हैं, इसी में रहो ना भाई, अपना काम करो, कारोबार करो. This kind of a concept of family you will not find anywhere. And in America, therefore, stepfather, stepmother, and therefore children are required to be protected, and child have been given such rights that they can immediately telephone the helpline and a person will come and arrest the parents. Fortunately, our family life is such, and it is such a precious thing. It has to be protected. Abhi Professor Saab, I was just with my wife, we had gone to California, just moving, finding, it was a heaven for senior citizens. So many senior citizens living there. Everybody are sitting by the side of the sea, looking just blank at the sky. And when we ask people, how is that? Well, it is a paradise for senior citizens because there are good medical facilities. Everybody has a senior citizens card. You just give a telephone call and immediately ambulance come. All things are there, all social protection completely. Every American citizen is looked after so well by the government. Yet they are so unhappy. They come here to meet Ravi Shankar ji, Art of Living courses, or go to the yogas. Why they say there is no person to say, साहब आपको कहाँ दुख रहा है, पैर दबा दूं आपका. पिताजी आप मायूस क्यों हैं, क्या बात है, ये घुमाने ले जाऊँ आप. There is no faithful son. On birthday they will come with a bouquet, but बाकी समय कभी चिंता नहीं करेंगे. आपके पास सीनियर सिटीजन कार्ड. हमारे यहाँ ये है, माँ बाप के लिए नौकरी छोड़ देते हैं, ट्रांसफर पे नहीं जाते, उनकी तीमारदारी करते हैं, कुछ समय निकालते हैं व्यवसाय में से उनके पास बैठे. They are all emotionally starved. And what is the quality of life? Not only materialistic. As in Gujarat people, everybody is Karodpati. But what is the use of that? What is the use of that unless you mingle with people, you laugh with them, you mingle with the society, you have affinity in the family, affection for the people. So law, if it protects the style and culture of the life of a particular community or a particular society, then it is accepted. Our lawmaking process does not take care of all these things. And the first thing is, law enforcement people must be consulted. People who are likely to be affected must be consulted. There should be a proper debate on that law in the parliament. In the experiment period, if it is found that that law was somewhat lopsided, it has to be amended. That exercise is not at all done. And therefore, in our country, so many laws are there, very little implementation. And when it goes to the implementation stage, our executive people come, साहब ये बिल्कुल impractical हो नहीं सकता. अब ये देख, because of the pressure of certain groups, now we have got mixed kind of governments. There are so many pressure groups on the government, apart from media. Media is of course they claim to be fourth pillar of the democracy. And they go on showing and showing one particular incident to force the government to take a particular decision. Similarly, different groups which are taking part in the governance insist that this particular law should be enacted and within a certain time and immediately. Now in Madhya Pradesh for tribal rights, they made a law. because there was a pressure by a particular governmental group that you should do it. They brought it, and tribal people did not know this kind of a thing. They were cultivating in some forest area. Foresters went, forest officials went, immediately some firing was done, sometimes they were driven out from their shelters, and then NGOs were involved. The NGOs told them that in any case you have to show your possession on a notified date. And if you show your possession, for that purpose you encroach, so that your possession is shown on that particular date. And they did it in large number, and thereafter there was a pitched battle between the forest force and the tribals, and some people died, and the matter came to Human Rights Commission. When we talked to the tribal people, they said, we do not know this kind of a law. NGOs told us that you do this. So unless there is an awareness of law, how can law be obeyed? And in a country where the culture is not to obey the law, how to find out to evade the law and break the law? Give corruption money and go ahead. Why should you worry about law? We had been to Dubai recently. There are law-abiding citizens, all Indians. Dubai comprises of 60% of Indians, Pakistanis and Bangladeshis, and only 30 or 20% are locals. Laws are made, laws are strictly enforced and followed by our own people. Look at the behavior of an Indian when he lands in America. He is a totally changed man. But when he comes here, he will not look at the signal also and just cross the red light, if the policeman is not to be found. Respect for law has to be developed in this country, and respect for law is not there at all. Because there are professions working only on this, how to evade law, violate law, and even our Bhindmorana area, murder was planned, hedged, already police was fixed up, doctor doing the post-mortem is fixed up, thereafter a planned murder takes place. So if the law is utilized for this purpose, our lawyers give their help for this purpose. Thanks to this country, even God will not save. And look at the corruption level everywhere. Nobody, no foreign country is going to rule you, but you will be destroyed by corruption. Democracy and rule of law will be just to be studied in Nirmal Law University. Of no use. Because if you are allowing people to carry on your work, just go on giving courtesy money everywhere and go ahead. In Delhi, when I was traveling, I said to my driver, how is that people from both sides are crossing? तो बोले साहब यहाँ पे व्हीकल और गाड़ी ऐसी चलती जैसे यहाँ दिल्ली का आदमी चलता है. उसको जगह बनाते जाना है जहाँ से जाना है. कैसा भी करे बढ़ेगा करियर में ग्रोथ में, तो जगह बनाते चले. तो दिस कंट्री जगह बनाते बढ़ रहे हैं by good and bad and foul means. Therefore, rule of law we cannot think of unless law making is proper, fairness in the law, people culture, their way of life is taken into account, when particularly you are legislating on the social issues. Executive has to be properly prepared for the purpose that once we make the law, the spirit of law has to be maintained and it should be enforced keeping into view the spirit of the law, not the letter of the law. And so far as judiciary is concerned, a vigilant judiciary which intervenes as and when required, and an easy access to the judiciary. Now a trend has started, Professor Dave, that take away all discretion from the courts. Stringent punishment, minimum punishments. Friends, let me tell you, working as a judge, we found that if the discretion of a judge is taken away to a very great extent, there is bound to be injustice. Bound to be injustice. But there are circumstances in which rapes takes place. Sometimes a rape takes place because the girl is not given a choice to marry at a particular place, and Sarpanch and Panchayat forces her not to do this and not to do that. Sometimes people are lured, they elope, and ultimately the woman is caught, then there is a report against the boy. So there are various circumstances. Of course, the Delhi incident, of course, requires a deterrent punishment like hanging. That discretion has also to be given to a judge. But other discretions has also to be given to take into consideration all the circumstances and evidence which has come on record. But if you say once there is a conviction, this sentence alone will be there. When in murder also, in the rarest of rare cases, we are giving hanging. So therefore, in judicial work, if your rule of law is to be maintained, sufficient elbow room, sufficient discretion has to be given to the judiciary. And everywhere, wherever the laws are made, impose this punishment and no other. That would create injustice, because you cannot compare two cases. There are cases before us where the woman has lured, asked the person to kidnap. अब यहाँ तो आप तो you are sitting in Gujarat, where Rukmini wrote a letter to Krishna ji, please come and take me. और फिर रणछोड़ दास जी आए और यहाँ से लेके आए, और आपकी गुजरात में यहाँ पे विवाह हुआ. We have mythology, we have history, and villages. Our human right norms say a girl must be consented, and her consent should be taken before she is put to marriage to a particular boy. Wherever it never happens in our villages. Parents decide against the wishes of the girl sometimes, and then there are problems for the girl. Therefore, our social scenario has to be taken into account, and Britishers were therefore started jury system. The reason was that they did not know the Indian life, Indian customs, Indian way of living, and therefore they wanted certain people from society to help them in dispensation of justice. If jury system is taken away, whether our judges should also be allowed to have that much of leeway and discretion in dispensation of justice. So for rule of law to become a rule of justice and fair play, completely taking away discretion of judiciary should not be done. That is my personal view. I do not know whether the legal fraternity would agree with that or not. Of course, a discretion is likely to be misused, discretion is likely to be distorted, sometimes it happens. But overall, an ideal situation would be if he is a good judge, he considers and weighs evidence on both sides and then decides the quantum of punishment and hears parties on the punishment, then law should not say you must impose this much and not below that. That is about that. And so far as human rights is concerned, now this is transnational law. I was talking to the law professors and teachers here, and I said that future will be the time when you will not be governed only by your Indian law, you will be governed by international law. That is human rights law. Being a member of the United Nations, all laws and all norms, conventions and treaties made there, you have to implement them by making domestic law. But two caveats are there. Many times what happens in the international forum, taking the universal situation, certain conventions and treaties are framed and then member countries are asked to implement them. That happened in many cases where all these laws are made. For example, elder citizens law has come. Every elder citizen will be given priorities in travel, in hospitals, in everywhere. How is that to happen here when 60 years or 65, 62 years age is the elder citizen's age? So many people are elder citizens in India, how are you going to provide them separate wards? Now this law has been imposed on us by that elder citizens treaty. So considering our domestic situation, only such laws can be implemented, otherwise they only remain on the statute book. And in this country only many laws are made and never notified for operation. This is also somewhere perversion law. Indian Industrial Disputes Act was amended after Bangalore water decision. That the definition of industry has been so much enlarged by Justice Krishna Iyer that all kinds of activities, enterprises, industries and any kind of even educational activity falls in the definition of industry. Then they decided to amend the Industry Disputes Act somewhere in the year 1975 or 78-79 to categorize certain industries which fall in the definition of industry. That act was amended in the year 1978 or 79, and till today that amended provision has not been notified. And even now today labor courts have to refer to Justice Krishna Iyer's Bangalore water case for deciding whether this particular activity is an industry or not. If you have made a law, can the executive remain dormant for such a long years in not notifying it and making the law almost a nullity? Almost a nullity. The matter came to us on behalf of the larger bench, and we said that it is high time that a relook should be done, and we made a reference to the larger bench. Madhya Pradesh Foundation Act has been brought into force. Presidential assent has been received. It is on the statute book. All lawyers are possessing a copy of it, and booksellers have already printed books. But the notification is not there to enforce the law. Without proper infrastructure, without proper man and material, without proper finances, you make the law. Right to education, all right, fundamental right. Where are the teachers? Where are the schools? Where are going to provide them primary education? Now the thinking has started. Ask people, and then jhola chhap teachers. You give them some dose and they are made teachers. This right to education. About human rights, one thing I have to say, and this I am saying because I am a retired judge, please. You have my freedom. Supreme Court has been interpreting Article 21 to include in it several kinds of rights. As a matter of fact, founding fathers had confined fundamental rights to such rights which are negative in character. That is only related to life and liberty. That everybody will have freedom to express themselves, freedom to move, freedom to carry on any business or occupation, freedom to have its own faith, to carry on their religious institutions, so on and so forth. That is a right from Article 14 onwards. But social and economic rights were given in directive principles. They are achievable goals in the course of time. And just likely that if supposing there is a great material progress, then possibly we may not require those rights at all. Now all those directive principles, rights or economic or social rights, if you read in Article 21, that requires some positive action on the part of the state. And how are you going to enforce that? Take for example the right to food. Nobody should die of starvation and food should reach everyone. Firstly, food production, which is based on nature. Then you import food from outside. Then your distribution system. And how are you going to see that this fundamental right actually is being realized by the people? Every time you will go to court, enforce that right under Article 32. So this interpretive exercise has to stop somewhere. The latest Professor Dave, right to sleep in Ramdev Baba's case. Everything is right. Right to breathe, right to sleep, right. How many rights? Right to environment, clean environment, right to transport, then right to education, and so many directive principles were there. Right to medical care. Medical care, the situation is, particularly in our Madhya Pradesh, all medical facilities are concentrated in cities. Primary health centers and community health centers, there are no doctors. There are no lady doctors. But it is a fundamental right. So all human rights, if you read them in chapter of fundamental rights, its enforceability would become just a sort of I should not use that word, a vote catching device. Slogans only, no realization of these rights. So therefore, founding fathers in their wisdom had made a compartment, something which the state is prevented from doing: fundamental rights. Allow people to assemble peaceably, allow people to express themselves. There should be no curtailment of media rights. These are fundamental rights. So far as health, education, empowerment of women, and elder citizens protection, etc., they were all in the directive principles: equal pay for equal work, and everything else. So now it is time that we must, and secondly, as I told you, concept of human rights is very good, and as a matter of fact, when constitution was being framed, already there was Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and our founding fathers very wisely included all those human rights declarations in our fundamental rights chapter. So our constitution is post Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Therefore, we are definitely right from day one when we became independent, are committed to protect fundamental freedom, human freedoms of the citizens of this country. Not only citizen, every person. Certain fundamental rights are applicable to every person, may not be a citizen of this country. But in accepting the treaty agreements and conventions, we have agreed in the constitution we will respect, regard international treaties and conventions, but taking into consideration our particular social conditions of India, our economic conditions. Presently now we are 66, 65 years of our independence, we have yet to provide work to everyone. Right to work, right to food, these things will gradually come. It can't come just sudden by magic stroke or a mandate or a direction of the court. And Supreme Court has enlarged this field and therefore enlarged its work also under PI jurisdiction to a very large extent. And PI jurisdiction means what? Once a case is lodged, it goes on for years together for monitoring. And ultimately when orders are not obeyed, then you have to use your contempt power. And then the apologies, sir, in this area we don't have finances. So these things are, so therefore, what is good governance ultimately? That is also a third topic given to me. Good governance ultimately comes to this: good and practical laws, fairly made, fairly implemented, and a vigilant and powerful independent judiciary. In governance also, Professor, I have one caveat so far as many interventions made by. Why there is so much talk of too much intervention by the court, judicial restraint should be there. In governance also, as I told you, in making, judicial dispensation, there has to be discretion left to the judge. Similarly, in governance, there has got to be some discretion given to the executives. You cannot say that this is a CAG, like an auditor can say, judiciary should not say this should only be the method by which you should have done it and no other method should be adopted. Because ground realities are totally different, which are unknown to the judges. When you ask people that you should nicely govern, you should give them a discretion to implement the laws with a human angle. Unless, therefore, I had a topic before me when I spoke in Bhopal also, humanizing the law dispensation or law enforcement. If letter of law is applied, you can never have a good governance. Law plus discretion together, and more discretion on the executive side, because they have to ultimately implement the law. They face the situations, they face the problems every day. आपने ऐसा क्यों नहीं किया, वैसा ना किया, ये पूछताछ बंद होनी चाहिए. So judges have to be activists in areas where question of fundamental right is, and judges should exercise judicial restraint when the question of governance comes. So friends, I think I have spoken sufficient in detail, and I am extremely thankful to Professor Dave, to the Vice Chancellor of the University, and all teachers and students to give me this opportunity. And I will only conclude with the words of Vivekananda, that I see future of India in these young people. We have, and let me confess as a judge, we have mismanaged the whole nation so much, and we are giving a crumbled institutions to you. It is for all of you here sitting to give strength to these democratic institutions, so that the spirit with which we started after the attaining freedom, we can carry on. And we do not want material progress only. We want spiritual advancement, and our way of life and our uniqueness of India should be maintained. That is what Vivekananda also thought. Thank you so much.